Throughout the stories in the books of Kings and Chronicles, there is an easy to overlook phrase that helps define the legacy of many of the kings of that divided kingdom. And that phrase is, he did not tear down the high places. Now, throughout the Old Testament, a high place is a generic term used to talk about an altar for offering sacrifices. Before the completion of the temple, God seemingly permitted worship at high places. However, when the temple was finished during the reign of Solomon and God's people had a permanent, organized place to worship, the function of high places changed, and so much so that high places became the default term for all altars of idolatrous worship. So from that point on, one of the defining ways that the biblical writers chose to characterize a king was by their relationship with these idolatrous high places. The first time that we see this emphasis on high places is when the kingdom of Israel split into Israel and Judah. In the north, Israel's first king, Jeroboam, was afraid of his people going to the south to worship at Solomon's temple. So he built high places in Dan and Bethel, as recorded in 1 Kings 13, so that his people could stay at home and worship. Well, not to be outdone, one chapter later, King Rehoboam of Judah built his own idols and high places under every green tree. We find that idolatry of the high places took over God's people very quickly, especially in the north. Throughout the rest of the time Israel existed, they worshipped at these idolatrous high places, their kings complicit in the nation's perversion. Well, this culminated in 2 Kings 17, verses 9 through 11, where God exiled Israel from their homeland because, among other sins, Israel worshipped pagan gods at the high places. But in the south, the relationship with high places was a little more complicated. King Asa of Judah, Rehoboam's grandson, was a truly great king. Asa cared greatly about following God, and he removed many forms of perverse worship from the southern kingdom. However, 1 Kings 15 and verse 14 tells us that Asa failed to tear down the high places. Well, similarly, Asa's son, King Jehoshaphat, was another righteous king, but 1 Kings 22 verse 43 says that he also failed to tear down the high places, and the people kept worshiping idols there. Jehoshaphat's son was a wicked man, a king by the name of Jehoram, and he contributed to the problem by building even more high places in 2 Chronicles 21 and verse 11. Well, all of this culminated in 2 Chronicles 28:25, where Jotham's son, a wicked king by the name of Ahaz, whose defining crime was sacrificing at the high places in every city of Judah. The royal family had yet again moved from generations of toleration to active participation in the idolatrous crimes of the people. It's not until 2 Kings 18 that the kings of Judah learned their lesson. King Hezekiah, perhaps seeing the fate of Israel, chose to remove all of the idols and the high places from across the land. God was pleased with Hezekiah's dedication to removing the high places. And the author tells us in chapter 18 and verse 5 that he was the most righteous king in all of Judah's history. However, even this was not a permanent fix for that nation. Hezekiah's son, a man by the name of Manasseh, who before his repentance was the most evil king in all of Judah's history. He went out of his way to build back the high places that his father had worked so hard to destroy. But finally, after generations of national struggle with these high places, in 2 Kings 23, King Joash once again destroyed the high places like his great-grandfather Hezekiah had done. Joash, having learned from the mistakes of his forefathers, had the priests defile the shrines and high places so that no one could ever worship at them again. The high places were finally destroyed forever. Clearly, these high places were a soft spot for the kings of Judah, even many of the good kings. Of all the good kings of Judah, only 2 ever destroyed these high places, making their righteous lives ultimately ineffective in changing the hearts of the idolatrous people. Even during the reign of these good kings, the people continued to ignore God and the law, and ultimately their own descendants lived just as wicked as the people. What a sad note for those who cared about the law. Friends, there's a great lesson that we can learn from this today. We need to remove the high places from our lives, those sins that are close to our heart, those temptations that we tolerate to be around us, the things that we know that are wrong, that we actively are continuing in, but we know we need to flee from, those stubborn sins that we just won't let go of, those things that we are placing in positions of prominence in our life where God belongs. We need to examine ourselves, and we need to remove these high places from our lives so that we may be pleasing unto God, and ultimately so that heaven may be our eternal home. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today, and have a blessed day.